All right, you guys, we gotta talk about a major weak point in Apple's product lineup, and that's the cameras. If you're buying anything other than an iPhone, the cameras that Apple are shipping right now are just bad. It's been a meme since the Intel days, but we all kind of thought that with the transition to Apple Silicon, we would get better cameras on a new design of product, and that Apple Silicon's image processing power would make the camera actually look good. But that didn't happen either. This is the most expensive MacBook Pro you can get. It starts at $2,500, but the camera looks like this. I mean, what am I even looking at here? Look at the textures on my face. It's completely smooth and muddy, and I mean, theoretically this is a 1080p camera, but it kind of looks like a 720p camera with a ton of like weird video effects applied to it. But it didn't used to be like this. Apple back in the day was a pioneer in camera technology. They were among the first to put actually usable webcams in their laptops. I mean, listen to the crowd back in 2006.
It's got an eyesight camera built in.
Hi, Steve.
Hi, Phil. How you doing?
Pretty good. I'm out here in the audience. I got a brand new MacBook Pro with its built-in eyesight camera. It's a blast.
But even before then, Apple used to make stuff like this, the original eyesight camera, and this thing was an absolutely beautiful piece of design. Look at it. It comes in this little cylindrical tube, and the design on this is absolutely stellar for being a 20-year-old product. And the camera quality, given its age, wasn't really that bad either. But clearly Apple has shifted their priorities away from those high quality cameras in recent years. And that's where Opal comes into play. They sponsored this video because their new camera, the Opal C1, is pretty much the answer to all of these problems. Opal was created by a bunch of folks that used to work at a lot of the major tech companies, and you can definitely tell when you look at this packaging. It definitely is a mix between Google, Microsoft, and Apple packaging, but the camera itself, as you can see, is absolutely tiny, and it's powered by a Sony CMOS sensor. In fact, that's basically the pitch for the Opal C1. It's DSLR-like quality in a $250 webcam, and the build quality here is spectacular. I mean, this is like a little brick. Yeah, you hear that? It's aluminum, and around the back we'll find a heatsink and our USB port. Down at the bottom there is a tripod thread mount, which you can put on a regular tripod, or this little mount, which is of course milled out of aluminum as you would expect, allows you to mount it on the top of your computer on pretty much any size display. And of course it runs over USB-C. We have this nice coiled cable here for maximum minimalism. Is that a thing? That sounds like a thing. Now, in case you haven't already guessed, my main camera today is, in fact, the Opal C1. And you can definitely see the similarity to my B camera, which is my usual Sony a7S III. That's because they're both using Sony sensors. But the difference is that camera costs over like $4,500 with the way that it's kitted out versus $250 for this webcam. Pretty impressive. So let's talk about how to get the most out of the Opal C1, and everything here is going to be kept super duper simple. I've just got the 15-inch MacBook Air, the camera with its included mount and the included USB-C cable. I've turned off the studio lighting. We're just using natural light, so you could do this in a hotel room or a classroom or a dorm or literally wherever you need to get work done. This is a really, really easy setup process. We just open the laptop, and then the mount is super simple. We just adjust it to put on the top of the screen. It'll fit literally any display you could imagine. So this is the software where you can make all sorts of adjustments, and it's part of why they call this the DSLR-like webcam. It's not just because of the image quality from that Sony sensor, it's also because it's highly adjustable, just like any good DSLR camera. So you can see down here we can adjust how blurred the background is. We can also adjust the zoom if you want this thing tripod mounted and further away, and we can even lock the focus. And this is something that I really like because, quite frankly, the autofocus on this camera needs a bit of work, and so you can just set it to where your face is, and then you don't have to worry about it grabbing that lamp in the background or something. But below that, there's also a ton of settings for changing the lighting. For example, I can add some exposure. I can even adjust the color temperature if you want to compensate for some weird lighting situations. And we even have access to stuff like backgrounds. So if I turn that on, this is great for presentations or if you are in a really unaesthetic room. And take a look at how good that target isolation is. Even if I hold up my hand here, this is something that normally confuses these types of algorithms, but even making some pretty complicated shapes here, you can see it's handling it really rather well. And I should also note that if you don't have Opal Composer open, there is a little toolbar up here which we can use to make adjustments on the fly. So the Opal C1 is a really promising start from a company that has only really been around for 3 years. But that being said, there are a couple of notes that I have. This is a very young company that is trying to make a breakthrough product, and as such, there's gonna be some issues. So the autofocus that I mentioned earlier, and there's also the microphones. I think they need to tweak the EQ on them just a little bit. You can probably hear now, they're very good. We've got a whole array of beam-forming noise canceling microphones on the front here, and they do a pretty good job at sound isolation, but they definitely could, I think, up the bass a little bit, try to remove some of that background hiss, and then they'd be in a really good spot. So I'm very curious to hear what you guys think of the Opal C1. Is this a webcam, or is this really just a mini DSLR camera that plugs in over USB-C? I'm honestly considering just using this for live streaming when I'm on the go. There have been multiple occasions where I travel with a tripod, a whole light setup, and an XLR mic, and all of this stuff where I could really just bring this, a USB-C cable, and maybe a USB-C mic if I'm doing a podcast. So definitely worth thinking about. I'm curious to know your guys' thoughts. Thanks so much to Opal for sponsoring this video, and I'll see you in the next one.